Come è che togli questo coso? Okay, please take your seats as fast as possible. Okay, so we're gonna start the next session. I hope you enjoyed the learning circle, kind of getting a bit of fresh air. You're gonna be inside for the whole day, so that's your last chance, I guess. But before we go on to the next, why is it not going to the next? Before we start our first, before I invite our first speaker of the day here, please connect again to the Slido. It's the same code we used yesterday. So either use the QR code or type in 3472681. You can submit the questions all throughout this session, and then we're going to read them out at the end for Laszlo to answer. But let me just very briefly introduce our next speaker. Very excited about this one. So this session is entitled Road Towards Local Climate Neutrality. So we're going to have a bit of a local perspective as to how we implement sustainable policies in cities. And we're going to hear from Laszlo Magyar, who's the project manager of Energia Club. So Laszlo is going to introduce himself, introduce Energia Club and all their wonderful work that they've been doing. So I'll hand it over to you, Laszlo, if you can still hear us.
Yes, and I shared my screen. Can you see?
Yes, we can see. Perfect.
And if I switch the slide, can you see it?
Yes.
Yeah, all right. All right. So welcome, everyone. My name is Laszlo Magyar from Energia Club, which is an NGO, and it has almost 30 years of experience on the field of renewable energy and energy efficiency and climate goals. I'm really sorry that I can't be there in person. I became ill in the last days. Maybe it's COVID, maybe not. But anyway, I tried to do my best and hold this presentation. About Energia Club a bit more. It's an expert NGO. We develop studies. We make policy proposals, develop climate strategies, and participating in European Union projects in larger consortiums. I will mention a project named Ready for Net Zero, which is an ongoing project in 5 European countries, including Hungary. And we are participating in it as an expert partner, and 3 cities or towns from Hungary also participating. First of all, I would like to speak shortly about the main issue, which is climate change. It's a very urgent issue, and we need to manage it somehow and lower it. Here you can see how the emissions were changing in the last 3 decades in the European Union per capita. So while in 1990 it was about 11 tons of CO2 emissions per capita per year, in the recent years it's around 7 tons. It's quite reduced, but still not enough. We have to faster this process. It's quite slow, the decrease. And you can see that after the COVID year 2020, the last 2 years had higher emissions. So the main goal of the EU, the green transition, the use of renewable energies, it's not going too well, and we must focus more on cities and towns of the EU. And why is it so important? Almost 40% of the population in European Union countries live in larger cities, and another about 35% live in towns and suburb areas. So the EU, actually Europe, is quite an urbanized continent. Lots of people live in towns and cities, and they consume a huge amount of energy that we should reduce. And towns and cities are important in our fight, so-called, against climate change. If we are talking about Hungary, it's quite similar. We have almost 40% of people live in cities and about 30% in towns and suburbs. Let's focus on these local authorities. They have some tools that they can use or develop to have some strategic document. First of all, I would like to mention the SECOPS, which is Sustainable Energy and Climate Action Plans, and the methodology of it built by the Covenant of Mayors organization on EU level. We, as Energia Club, we develop SECOPS for towns and cities in Hungary. About 100 towns and cities have already a SECOP. But for example, in Italy, there are much more settlements with SECOPS. It's a document that collects all mitigation and adaptation measures, and in the last few years also try to manage energy poverty. And it's really important to have reachable goals, to have these measures and planned investments towards energy neutrality, or for the first step towards, for example, 40 or 55% of CO2 reduction. Another important strategy is climate strategy, which based on Hungarian methodology. In Hungary, it's very similar to SECOPS, a bit different in goals and in vision and in measures, but quite similar. In Hungary, some of the towns and cities have SECOPS and climate strategies as well. Others only have one of them. But we can develop urban heat plans or sustainable urban mobility plans, environmental protection programs. So there are a lot of tools, but it's quite often that local authorities don't have enough money, so financial options, enough expertise, and enough human resources. So these are the main barriers that we try to manage and try to destroy. Let's go on, and I would like to speak about shortly about the Ready for Net Zero project that I mentioned before. So this Ready for Net Zero project is a European Union finance project which goes in 5 European countries: Germany, Poland, Croatia, Romania, and Hungary. And it focuses on small and medium-sized cities and try to help them, their local authorities, to develop a local long-term climate neutrality strategy and have this fair transition to local net zero emissions. It's a really urgent need, as I mentioned, to support these settlements, and we can support them by exchanging knowledge, providing good practices, and building capacities inside these municipalities and outside capacities, just like us, external expert companies or organizations. Which are the main goals of this project? I mentioned that there are expert organizations from different countries and also pilot cities from different countries. For example, in Hungary, we have Szeged, Szentes, and Tatabánya, which are in this project. And there are other towns and cities from Poland, Romania, Croatia. And there is Germany as a good example. For example, next week we will go on a study trip to Germany, to Chemnitz, and they will show us best practices that they did or developed, and that we can follow or copy in our own towns and cities. It's really important to develop these capacities, the knowledge and the skills among the municipality officials. This exchange and networking is also important. Inside this capacity development program, we developed a very long and interesting guidance document, which is about how to get financial sources, how to monitor our ongoing projects, and the decrease of our CO2 emissions and so on. We also held webinars for municipality members and experts, and in-person workshops in their national languages. And as I mentioned, there is a study tour next week in Germany. And we also try to kickstart concrete actions in these pilot cities to have something inside this project, which is a good step forward towards climate neutrality. And also we have a very diverse dissemination goal or dissemination activity. For example, as I speaking about this project for you, for the next generation, next decision makers or next experts, it's really important to know about these issues and these goals. A small but important thing about this climate neutrality goal that I have to keep in our mind. So when can we reach climate neutrality, and how can we reach climate neutrality? We speak about climate neutrality on EU level, on a country level, and on city or town level as well. But according to my knowledge and my thoughts, on a city level, it's hardly reachable, the complete climate neutrality. For example, on this diagram, you can see the CO2 emissions and absorption of Tatabánya, which is one of the cities that participate in Ready for Net Zero project. And you can see that the emissions, the column of the emissions is way higher than the absorption. The absorption is barely visible on the diagram. So even if forests and green areas are very important in the absorption of CO2, we have to focus mainly on emissions and the reuse of these CO2 emissions, and we need immediate actions. Another diagram, it's about Szeged, which is another city in this project, and we developed this city's climate strategy and SECAP, and we collected all the emissions for the year of 2008 and for 2022. You can see that there is a slight decrease in total emissions, but it's not enough. 14 years have passed, and it's just a slight decrease. Even if this city is quite ambitious, and there are people who are working in the municipality and very ambitious, but still, it's pretty hard. It's a long process, and it differentiates between sectors as well. For example, if you see the columns in the middle for residential buildings. They managed to reduce the emissions of residential buildings by installation, by modernization of heating practices. But still, for example, transportation, the emissions of transportation have increased. So it's a common problem in Europe and in Hungary as well, almost in all cities and towns, that the emissions from transportation is increasing, and we need an urgent change and switch to cycling and public transport instead of using more and more cars, because these are the main source of emissions in this according to this diagram. Well, a few words about how we can decrease these emissions. Mainly, most of the emissions come from the energy consumption of buildings. So the first thing that we should focus are buildings. And there are steps that we should follow. First of all, we need energy sufficiency and awareness raising. So we need to reduce emissions, energy consumption, and therefore emissions throughout the awareness raising and changing of habits. I'm talking about easy things, reducing the heating temperature during winter time, or using passive solar energy. These are very, very important things, because we don't need money for it. We don't need investments. We don't need any installation. So it's really important to reduce the amount of energy used in buildings. And people usually think that they do their best by, for example, use plastic waste and paper waste in different bins, and then they eat vegan or vegetarian meals. But these things are much more effective to reduce the winter heating temperature inside our buildings, or not to use cars, or just mention it, never fly, because that's the main problem nowadays with increasing emissions. Okay, let's go back to this guidance that I mentioned, which was developed for local authorities. Which are the main questions that it try to answer? How to manage climate action effectively? Yeah, it's a main question. But how to formulate and implement climate goals? It's important to have reachable but ambitious climate goals. How to effectively engage citizens and stakeholders? Another very important thing, because it can't be a very effective plan and implementation without citizens and without local stakeholders. So we need to engage them from the beginning. How to plan and finance climate action, how to monitor progress, how to ensure social justice, which is very important in EU level as well. How to implement effective mitigation and adaptation measures. I mentioned mainly mitigation measures, but adaptation measures are also important. How we can adapt to the different world with different climate background. How to improve energy efficiency to reduce emissions. What development models can help cities achieve climate neutrality. It's a very complex guide. It's a practical guidance. It also contains innovative approaches, some funding options, and also best practice examples. In the next slides, I will show you some best practices. And here you can see the link to this guidance. I would suggest it to read it, one or two chapters at least, just to see what are the main issues and how this guidance try to give information to solve these issues. And let's back to the best practice examples. I brought 2 examples from Hungary, but in the guidance you can find much more from other countries as well, from Germany, from Poland, from Croatia, from Romania, even from Spain. So I will just show you briefly 2 best practices from Hungary. I will mention 2 towns which had several different good investments or plans in the last few years. First of all, let's see Budaörs, which is a smaller town quite close to Budapest. And Budaörs was a good example, or the local authority of Budaörs was a good example how to involve citizens in strategic planning, how to involve NGOs and experts in strategic planning. They developed a website, they collect proposals, they had a press conference, workshops, SWOT analyses, focus group roundtable discussions, they developed a problem map. So they really try to involve everyone and everything and have a wide basis which they can build the strategy on. They use the bottom-up development for strategic documents. So when organizations or authorities use top-down development, it always suffer from different issues. This bottom-up approach is much better when we start from the bottom and involve everyone. And also a successful communication is very important, just to let people know why this strategy is so important, why they have important role in the implementation process. So communication, very important. They also developed a municipal energy monitoring system, which is quite rare in Hungary. So far, not a lot of local authority has this system. They monitor all public buildings, the energy consumption of all public buildings, and they can decide where and when they would like to renovate buildings or exchange heating systems or so on. And the first point that I mentioned on this slide and I skipped so far is the Positive Energy District Plan, because I would like to speak a bit more about this Positive Energy District Plan. It financed by the European City Facility Fund, EUCF, and it's a smaller part of the town where they would like to have investments, both energy efficiency investments and renewable energy investment, and try to produce at least that much energy that they use in this small area or more. So this Positive Energy District Plan is just a name. It's not not the main goal to reach positive energy saldo, but they try to get as close to it as possible. This district in Budaörs is the total area of it is 52 hectares, and it contains residential buildings, office buildings, public buildings, and shopping centers as well, and of course the transportation on the roads. It contains a big shopping center or 2 big shopping centers, Auchan and Decathlon, a lot of high multi-apartment buildings. So it's quite a diverse area. Quite a lot of people live there, and it's not easy to provide as much energy from renewable sources in such a small area as they need. Along the development of this plan that we Energia Club managed, we use this hot maps software just to see what are the total energy needs of the buildings in this area, or what are the energy needs of non-residential buildings, such as shopping centers. And along these figures, we can see where are the main spots of energy consumption, where people or social service sector buildings use more energy, where we need more energy. And also we need to know what are the area where we can put on, for example, solar PV panels. These are the separate actions that we included into the plan to form this positive energy district. The first part is about renewable energy. We made a renewable energy analysis, how much area we have, including rooftops and parking lots for solar PV systems. What are the energy need for heating, and how much we can reduce it by using heat pumps. I mean, not the energy need, but the emissions, because we also need this energy, but from renewable sources, of course. We also analyze the energy efficiency measures or potential by calculations, including multi-apartment houses, by putting insulation on them where they don't have, analyzing public buildings and service sector buildings as well. For example, the lighting system or air handling units of these service sector buildings. We also analyze the transportation, which is an important part of it, as I mentioned before, and as we see that the emissions from transportation is increasing, it's a very urgent problem. We planned community bicycle service stations. On the right, you can see the spots where we planned them, and electric car charging stations. And there are also energy awareness raising measures, for example, including smart metering in residential buildings, or putting smaller solar smart benches or wind trees in the parks. People really love that. So they when I mentioned that it's quite expensive, but maybe it can raise awareness, they said that, oh, it's beautiful, we need them. Okay, let's go on with the other good practice with the town of Szentes, which is located in the southeastern part of Hungary, in the Great Hungarian Plain. It has also good measures and good plans already. For example, we managed to develop their SECOP, also just like in Budaörs or in Szeged. And they not just wanted us to develop this SECOP, but they wanted to have a continuous monitoring on it, how they can manage to have these continuous measures and ongoing, and how they can fill the gaps. So they asked us, or we have a contract until 2030, which includes that we monitor their progress in every 2 years, analyze their emissions, and analyze their steps forward, and give a feedback in every 2 years. In Szentes, they have a pretty high proportion of renewable energy use, both in electricity by solar PV panels, and both in heating systems. And it's a really good example that they provide enough geothermal energy for the district heating system that it can operate 100% based on geothermal energy. It's quite unique. Not a lot of cities or towns in the European Union can show this high percentage of renewable energy in their district heating system. About a few words about this district heating system. You can see on the right on the map Szentes, and the red spots are geothermal wells. There are quite a lot in the area of Szentes. It began around 1970 or so they have quite a history in geothermal energy. They had continuous development and expansions, and that was the continuous progress was the one that made it possible for Szentes to base its district heating supply 100% on renewable energy, providing 90,000 gigajoule heat in every year. And it contributes significantly to meet the municipality's sustainable energy and climate goals. So it's included in the SECOP to expand this system and reach more public buildings and more residential buildings by this geothermal-based district heating system. A lot of buildings are already connected to this system. Public buildings, residential buildings, also agricultural sites, which need a lot of heating, for example, during winter time. Service providers, industrial operators, and they can utilize in this way clean and local energy. And moreover, they're connected to a predictable system, which is also very important. Not just local, not just clean, but predictable. For example, 2 years ago, when the gas prices were pretty high and everyone was very afraid of winter and how we can produce enough gas to our systems. Now here is a system that is based on local energy, and it's a very predictable system, and it's one of the cheapest district heating systems in Hungary. A few other measures which were included into Szentes's SECOP. For example, if you are focusing on public buildings, solar PV systems and the expand of geothermal district heating system produce more and more renewable energy for the public buildings year by year. So they are going forward step by step, and they try to use renewable energy, local renewable energy, as much as they can. There are other measures, for example, complex renovation or household appliances exchange program in residential buildings, or PV system, heat pumps. These are percentages which are the ultimate goal of the SECOPs, how much percentage of the residential buildings are in these different steps. So we would like to renovate 30% of residential buildings, put PV systems on 40% of houses, and so on. So during the monitoring processes in Szentes, they always collect the strengths and weaknesses, the obstacles and solutions, options. The last monitoring was in last year. We made it. So they also joined with municipal specialists, but they used us as external experts, and it was a light monitoring process. But after 2 years, there will be a deep monitoring process when a new emission inventory will be produced for the last year emissions. And if we are talking about lessons learned, it's really important when we have goals towards local climate neutrality that we have the experts and managers who contribute to the process, and we have transparency and continuous review of the development, close cooperation, and the more frequently we review the progress of the measures, is the better. As I mentioned, there are other good examples in the document, in the guidance.
Just for your interest, we are missing 5 minutes for the presentation. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm at the last slides.
Thank you very much.
So there are other good examples. For example, the mitigation of strategy goals in Kempten, Germany, or energy efficiency management in another town. Road mapping of the 2050 goals in Brașov, in Romania, and so on. Integration of spatial planning. So you can find a lot of good examples in the document. But in this presentation, I wanted to show you two main and followable and good examples from Hungary. So that's from my side. Thank you for your attention, and I'm waiting for your questions.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Laszlo. I think it was really great to hear about a bit of a local perspective and good examples in Hungary as well. So we've had lots of interesting questions. You're going to be interested in hearing them. So so I would ask the participants, I know you've submitted questions, would be great if Laszlo could hear actually from you directly. So if you gather the courage to speak with the microphone, maybe I can, is there anyone that wants to ask a question? Should I kick it off maybe with one? The most voted online was, how has climate change impacted emissions from heating and cooling buildings, and how will it continue to do so?
All right. Yeah, in the last decade or so, we had pretty warm summers, hot summers, and long dry and hot periods. So absolutely, we have to manage these climate change issues, that we need more cooling energy, more energy for cooling year by year, and probably less energy for heating. In Hungary, in the next few decades, it won't change. So we will need more energy for heating still than for cooling. But for example, in the last 2 years in Hungary, the new heat pump systems were extremely high. The newly installed heat pump systems, and systems that can heat and cool in the same time. It's a need of people, mainly in residential buildings, but also in public buildings, that they have a good air conditioning system and a cooling system. And the number of these installations are increasing in an incredible amount, and yeah, it will continue. So the best solution for it is insulation and the replacement of windows and doors, so we can decrease the amount of energy we need both for cooling and heating. And another important thing is as I mentioned, the change in lifestyle habits, or the energy awareness, that we don't need 25 degrees in our houses at wintertime, and we don't need 22 degrees during the summer. So let's have around 20 degrees at the winter and around 26, 27 degrees in the summertime by heating and cooling, and we can reduce our energy consumption a lot.
Thank you, Laszlo. Anyone courageous enough? Thank you. Yes. Can we get the microphone to this gentleman, please?
Thank you for the presentation. My name is Asfandyar. I wanted to know about whether there are any smart city projects implemented in Hungary. I did not see in your presentation a reference to smart city projects. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question. There are projects that include some measures for towards smart city systems, but not as a whole projects for smart cities. So the main issue in Hungary are the lack of smart metering. for example, which are the base of a smart city system. So we have very few smart meters in our houses, and that's a problem also if we are talking about the household PV systems, because the system operators don't see how much energy these local household systems produces, and how much they need over this production for these households. So the lack of smart metering is an urgent issue. They planned some kind of projects to increase the number of smart meters, but they said it's too expensive after this pilot project. But yeah, we have to install smart meters in every houses and every public buildings as soon as possible, which will be the base for smart metering systems. There are companies that provide smart operations for local authorities, for some public buildings. So there are good examples, but as far as I see, not on a city level.
Thank you, Laszlo. Any more questions from the audience? Yes, thank you.
Okay, I have a small one, but in the beginning you said like the emissions of transport are increasing. I was wondering, is it because of the more people like living in the cities, or is it because of more people owning private cars or something?
Yeah, the one thing is the increase in the number of cars. So as I analyzed different towns in Hungary, we always face this issue that the number of cars are increasing year by year, every year. So the amount of the increase is not as high in the last 2 years or so than it was 5 or 6 years ago, but the numbers are still increasing. So that's the main problem. Also, another problem that not also the number of people live in cities are increasing, but the number of people who live in suburbs of larger cities. So, for example, if we are talking about Budapest, a lot of people use their cars to enter the city instead of public transport, because there are no good ways of public transport from a lot of smaller towns in the suburban areas of Budapest. So more and more people use their cars, and they use actually more and more cars.
Thank you, Laszlo. We have 5 more minutes, a bit less, for more questions. Any brave person in the audience? There's lots of questions on the slide, so you can ask the same question you have had there. Otherwise, yes, the lady here behind IT support.
At some point you mentioned that when you take a bottom-up approach, you have a lot less issues than if you do a top-down approach. So I was wondering if you could expand on that. So what happened, like what kind of issues do you run into when you take a top-down? And is it only in certain types of activities, or do you notice that across the board?
When local authority leaders or decision makers don't involve people, NGOs, stakeholders into the decision-making process, they often face with an insufficient solution. So when they try to manage a problem and they have something in their head about this solution, but they don't ask the people live there, they face different kind of issues. I can mention an exact thing that yeah, but it's usually a problem that what they expect it doesn't work in real life. For example, if they have something, a financial source for something that they think that people will need or people will use, but they don't reach enough people, or they have different different point of view about the solution of the problem. They don't have enough information, and they only get these information and other point of views if they involve other stakeholders. It's also a problem when they don't communicate with industrial stakeholders, or they don't communicate with people in education, for example. Yeah.
Thank you. We have a couple more minutes for one last question. Yes, the lady here.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. My question is, what is the reason that the municipal energy monitoring system is so rare in Hungary? Is it because it's complex to implement, or there's lack of funding? Is there low awareness or low expertise? Like, what's the main reason it's so rare? And would you recommend to implement it to the rest of the bigger cities in Hungary?
Yeah, it's an ongoing process. In the last decade or so, I think the main problems were lack of awareness and lack of expertise. In Hungary, local authorities have quite low amount of money to solve local issues, and this was one that they don't think about, or they don't want to spend money on it, or they don't have someone who can manage the process, who can collect data, who can analyze data, and give good advices to decision makers. In the last 1 or 2 years, we see more and more good examples. So they started to collect more and more data, and the year 2022 was the year when they realized that it's a huge problem, because when the gas and electricity prices went high, they faced a really huge problem, how they can produce enough energy, how they can finance the energy need of their buildings. So nowadays, or for example, in our SecOps that we develop, we always mention to have this monitoring system, have this energy data in one file or one system year by year, and monitor them and see how the investments, how effective were the investments, for example, installation or the change of heating system, and just to sort their building, the public buildings, which are the main energy consumers, which are the ones that need immediate action. And in the 10 years ago, the main issue was that almost all local authorities have no any information about their energy consumption, or the comparison of their energy consumption in their buildings. So it's there was a lack of knowledge, a lack of awareness, some lack of finance, but it's changing.
Perfect. We don't have time for any more questions, Laszlo, but please join me in thanking Laszlo again.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'm just gonna jump back here. So let me just explain what's gonna be happening now. So we're gonna go on to the coffee break. But after the coffee break, you're gonna have directly the implementation workshop, okay? So don't come back. You can leave your stuff here, but you won't come back here. Just go directly to your groups outside. And after that, we're gonna have lunch. And after lunch, you have to be back here at 1:40 at the latest, okay? So thank you again, Laszlo. We're going to send you the questions via email, if that's okay, since the participants had lots of interesting questions we didn't have the time to get to.
All right.
So please enjoy the coffee break on the first floor.